Are you ready for some smart, plain talk on politics, Israel, and the law? It's the Andrew Parker Show. Let's roll. Welcome to another episode of the Andrew Parker Show. This is episode 454. Go to theandrewparkershow.com. You'll see our website. Email us. Text us. Send us a message. Let us know if you agree or disagree. Let us know of topics that you'd like to hear more about. And note, you can do notes on your iPhone, your Android. Note that coming up, and maybe putting a little alarm in there so it beeps to remind you, but note that coming up this week, episode 455 with Eliza Lewin from Washington, D.C., and a leader in the fight against anti-Semitism. Very knowledgeable about the background and the issues that we face today in this country. Coming up, it will be dropping in just a few days, so watch for that. Today, I would like to talk once again about what's going on here in the one-time great city of Minneapolis. And certainly it was. Until the election of the far left, it's always been a liberal city. It's always been a city run by Democrats. But it has been, in large part, like Minnesota generally, a good government body politic. Voters who demand good government. That just isn't the case anymore. In fact, if you run on a far left-wing agenda that is hardly recognizable in the United States, or at least was at one time, you have a greater chance of being elected, which is why Amy Klobuchar has moved so far to the left, ridiculously so, and sadly so, because there are so many votes in this state that require it in order for you to get the endorsement, the nomination, and ultimately to be elected. And it is likely that she will be running for governor of the state of Minnesota. So she abides by moving her position based upon which way the wind is blowing in terms of Democratic policy, far left policy, moderate, middle, which is where she always was. Not anymore. But when you look at the state of Minnesota and Minneapolis, it was always that way, that the good government elected officials. And now what we see are riots, arson, summer of George Floyd in 2020, the closing and lockdown of the entire state, the elderly dying without their loved ones around them, dictated by Governor Tim Walz, his failure, along with the mayor of Minneapolis' failure to protect law and order. And now we see it again as they gin up the people, the left-wing liberals, those that have come here, those that have moved here, illegal immigrants and the like, to create this really burgeoning movement of fanatics, of radicals. And now they're in the streets daily, fighting against federal law enforcement who are here to enforce the law. Federal officials who are here to enforce the law, a law which Joe Biden did not enforce, and that was at the border, and now we have an enormous problem. And the governor and the mayor simply continue to stir the pot, to encourage people to come out, to oppose, stand in the way of federal law enforcement doing their job. Now, I will say, and to be very clear, how the federal law enforcement does their job in enforcing the democratically elected laws on the books, in deporting illegal immigrants in this country, just like, by the way, Barack Obama did in huge numbers. But how they do it is important. The problem is when local elected officials, state officials, oppose and encourage opposition to federal law enforcement doing their job. In fact, protecting the criminal, protecting those that are here illegally now that they are here. Once they've been identified, protecting them. Even if they've committed crimes, protecting them from being deported, from being arrested. Siding with these criminals, that has made the job that much more difficult and resulted in errors being made, anger by ICE officials and law enforcement, and carrying out some of the apprehensions in a way that they should not. And when they don't, that doesn't mean, we've got to do away with enforcing the law. We will no longer enforce the law because the criminals won, we lost. Because the state local officials who lost elections and didn't get their way on the books are now protecting and siding with the criminals, making it impossible for federal officials to do their job, or at least very difficult. And it results in horrific consequences, sometimes death. And that is what has happened. But at the root of it, it goes something like this. I've played this before for you, but when you're looking for answers, oftentimes you go to the great communicator, President Ronald Reagan.
Those people told you for days in advance that if the university sought to go ahead with that construction, they were going to physically destroy the university.
So if the university did something they opposed, they were going to physically destroy it. Not go to the ballot box, get elected, and change the policy. No. Instead, vigilantism, destroy the property. That's what was being argued and fought about at Berkeley.
Now, why did you
negotiate many times?
Negotiate? What is to negotiate? What is?
The university is a public institution.
That's right. But the university,
its own community, and for the community of Berkeley that live around.
So they're arguing the facts. They're arguing policy. They disagree. We are a system of laws. You follow the law. If you disagree, you have the law changed. Yes, you have the right to protest under the First Amendment, consistent with the First Amendment. You do not have the right to riot. You do not have the right to threaten law enforcement. You do not have the right to incite violence. If that's not happening, you should not be shot. If that's not happening, you should not be arrested. If that's not happening, you should not have a fight or a conflict in the streets. But in fact, that is happening. Again, the facts of what has gone on are being played up by the elected officials here, local and state, in the state of Minnesota. They're being ginned up, and the media is joining in happily, stating facts that are greatly disputed. Now, you can say, the right is lying. And others say, the left, they're lying. Maybe, but those facts are important. And so, when did it all start?
All of it began the first time some of you who know better and are old enough to know better let young people think that they had the right to choose the laws they would obey as long as they were doing it in the name of social protest.
There it is. There it is. Decades ago. Gosh, it was 60 years ago, plus or minus. And it's the same or similar issue and principle that we have today. Some of you that are old enough to know better, Tim Walz, Jacob Fry, encouraging to get in the face of federal law enforcement, encouraging to interfere, to obstruct the enforcement of the law. I can't support that. I will never support it. Just like if it's carried out in an illegal, improper, lack of due process manner, I won't support that either. If that's what the federal government is doing, and if there are incidents where they have done it, it needs to be called out and it needs to be responded to. Maybe through the justice system. If the facts of the two shootings that we know of thus far, resulting in the death of 2 Minnesotans, indicates that there was no basis for the use of deadly force, I will be fully supportive, not only of a full investigation, but of an indictment, if it calls for that. And there's a fight over the facts. There's a fight over the video and what you see and whether it yields a conclusion one way or the other. But that's important to get to the bottom of. But encouraging obstruction, interference, and that is what is being encouraged. Interference with carrying out legitimate law enforcement action. And that part is wrong. The rule of law should be followed, must be enforced. There are consequences for not. And when we toss that aside, that's when we're in real trouble. The law was to desegregate the schools in this country, and that was going to be carried out by hook or by crook everywhere, including in the South, and the federal government was going to make sure of it. They sent federal troops who were opposed by the state and local elected officials in the South, including George Wallace, amongst others. And there became confrontation between state officials and forces and federal law enforcement. And you remember it well, and it was ugly. But it was federal law being enforced by federal law enforcement officers. And that is what is going on here. And when the state intentionally interferes and obstructs that, just like they did in the 60s. When the state does that, they need to be moved aside. When they block the desegregation, they need to be moved aside. Not because desegregation is the right policy and anybody opposed to it is a bigot and a racist. That may all be true. But the reason it is correct is because it is the law, and the rule of law must be followed. And if you don't like it, then you better win the next election. You better have your policies and the law, your policies injected and passed as law. Well, that's not what the Democrats are doing. That's not what Tim Walz is doing. That's not what Jacob Frey is doing. They are saying, no, we are going to ignore the law. It is not Donald Trump. It is not Homeland Security. It is not ICE agents, Department of Justice, that is ignoring the law. If mistakes are made, if violations are resulting, it should go through the legal process. Fine, understandable. And we may disagree on whether it's legal or illegal. That'll be decided through the judicial branch. That's how our system works. But you do not obstruct or interfere with actions just because you disagree with them politically. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you a business owner? Are you losing sleep because you feel your partner isn't carrying their weight, or because you no longer share the same vision or values? Are you no longer comfortable going into your own office? Are you walking on eggshells in the company you built? This is Chris Daniels, founding partner of Parker Daniels Keyboard LLC, a premier litigation law firm headquartered in downtown Minneapolis. For more than 30 years, I've specialized in business litigation and have helped hundreds of business owners resolve troubling business disputes. As a former certified public accountant, I get to the heart of the dispute, including financial issues. Business divorce can be messy, time-consuming, and costly, but doing nothing can cost you a lot more. Not just money, but emotionally, physically, and in your personal life. If you and your business partner no longer see eye to eye and you're eager to take a proactive approach and make a change, please call me at 612-355-4100 and schedule a consultation. Or visit our website at www.parkerdk.com.
Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you. As it relates to immigration, we know for a fact it was a crisis. Joe Biden let in millions with no process, none. It's a violation of the law. They are here illegally. They should not be here, and they should be, if they are here, have gone through a process of vetting just like everyone else who is here legally and is a citizen or is here working towards citizenship. People say, well, those who came in and did not go through the process are still human beings. They're still people, and we need to have a compassionate, empathetic hug for those who have come here and not gone through the process. If we had our act together, they would have gone through the process. I agree with all of that, except for the fact is that they didn't. And so we need to remedy that. You can't simply ignore the law, as Joe Biden did for years, allow millions in, and once they're here, oh, that's the way it goes. And by the way, sorry about all the death and destruction that they're causing. People say, that's all overstated. No, it's real. And if they were your daughter or your son who was murdered or raped or trafficked, you would know and think it was real as well. That's not empathetic or compassionate, to ignore those people, those parents. It's horrific. And when people simply say, look at Donald Trump sending in these federal officers, surging these federal officers, this is Gestapo Nazi tactics. No, obstructing and interfering with the legitimate actions of the federal government in enforcing the law that are on the books, because in a democratic society, it goes through a process to enact law based upon elections. And if you want to change it again, go ahead and elect people that will change it. But you can't simply say, we're going to change the rules as it relates to that. And by the way, what about Barack Obama? He deported thousands and thousands. And it was immigration, customs, ICE. They deported thousands under Obama. Well, they did it differently. They did it properly. They didn't do... No. The difference was the Republicans who were in charge did not obstruct and interfere with the Democratic administration's deportations. Now, there should have been many more, but he deported many. The open border of Joe Biden resulted in a crisis here in this country and on the streets of many major cities in this country that required and requires, as we sit here, deportations. And obstructing and interfering with it is, quite frankly, undermining the rule of law. And that is that's the beginning of the end for this country. When you ignore the rule of law. And people say, well, it's Trump that's ignoring the rule of law. It's not the protesters. No, that's not true. That's just not true. Well, the way they're doing it violates the law. If it does, as I've already said, you go in and you indict. You investigate, and if there were criminal violations by an ICE officer, the law will apply. Consequences will result. But the answer is not continue to obstruct and interfere. Continue to violate the law by attacking federal law enforcement. No. Do so by biting the finger of a federal law enforcement officer until you bite it off, which is what happened last week. No. There are significant arguments related to the issues that we see in Minneapolis. But the fundamentals come down to violation of the rule of law and the enforcement of the same. And for that, there is no compromise. There can't be. Now let me shift gears just for a few minutes. I want to comment on what's going on in Iran. And I will be adverse to the President of the United States on this subject. Like others before him, namely Barack Obama, the coddling of Iran, and who could say President Trump has coddled Iran? He killed Soleimani. He bombed Iran, first president to do that to the level or degree that he did, setting back their nuclear program. Many years he has set in motion some of the strongest sanctions ever against any country. All of those things. So who could say he's been soft on the regime in Iran? But this week it was reported that nearly 37,000 people have been murdered by the regime in Iran. And you will recall that a week before that, Donald Trump, a couple weeks ago, said to the people of Iran, you are strong, continue your protests, help is on its way. Well, there really hasn't been help. And now, as I say, it's reported that nearly 37,000 people, citizens, openly voicing their opposition to the regime, have been murdered. And it's horrific. Help is on its way, the United States says. The leader of the free world says, the leader of our country. And it apparently isn't on its way. Nothing has happened other than the massacre of many thousands of more Iranians who are brave enough, who are strong enough to be in the streets trying to turn their country back to one in the number of nations, civilized countries, and what a great country it was. And so it can be again. But the regime stands in the way for sure, as it stands in the way of peace in the Middle East. It is the number one obstacle to peace in the Middle East, without question or doubt. It is the single largest government sponsored of terrorism anywhere in the world. And so the president's failure to take any action to protect those protesting, to take action, rather than just use words, but take action when his words are not heeded, it's an enormous problem. And it also sends a message to others that when push comes to shove, the president, may send in a sortie of aircraft, even the B-2 bombers that took out the nuclear facilities. But beyond that, and that was obviously that was significant, but it was in and out, and that was it. One maneuver, it did the job. It met all of its objectives, but a bigger sort of operation, no, he has balked, and he may not actually do what it takes. This is the opportunity. Think of how horrific and damning it will be for the future of Iran if these protests, in the millions of people, it is reported, is put down by the regime and people are sent back to their homes or murdered or disappeared. it will very likely mean such an uprising will never happen again, and particularly the United States will not be trusted to support peace and democracy, to get rid of the biggest obstacle to peace in that entire region, thereby saving many, many lives of great allies in Israel for the United States, but also thereby undermining the potential for a continuation and actually a very broad signing of the Abraham Accords and its expansion. I hope the president gets that. I'm sure he's getting some great advice from some in his administration. Unfortunately, there are others, including potentially, it appears, the vice president of the United States, who takes a totally different view, and one that is not America first, one that is dangerous, one that will cause much more blood to run in the streets, including American blood. Thank you once again for joining me on the Andrew Parker Show. We will be back next time with Eliza Lewin for episode 455, and we will talk anti-Semitism and how is it possible in the year 2026 that we have really dropped into the abyss of hate and bigotry against the Jewish people to the level that we have. It is horrific. We're going to talk about that, shed some light on it, some of the catalysts of it, and hopefully learn something to fight our way out of it. Go to theandrewparkershow.com. Like us, subscribe, follow us and the like. And until next time, be kind to your neighbor. For more smart, plain talk, go to theandrewparkershow.com. Learn about all of your listening and viewing options. And remember, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. This episode of The Andrew Parker Show is sponsored by Parker Daniels Keyboard and True North Private Investments. Mark Twain once quipped, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. When you are lied about and it spreads, the resulting mayhem and destruction can be, and often is, disastrous." Hi, this is Andrew Parker, co-founder of the Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm. I recently handled a high-profile defamation lawsuit on behalf of a luxury home real estate agent whose business was decimated by falsehoods spread about him. After nearly 2 years of litigation and 2 weeks of trial, the jury came back with a verdict of more than $2 million for our client. Parker Daniels Keyboard. We litigate cases, we try cases, and we win cases. With a record of excellence in achieving extraordinary results, Parker Daniels Keyboard lawyers have consistently won huge verdicts for its clients in the areas of defamation, civil rights violations, regulatory battles, and intellectual property theft. For wise counsel and winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard, premier law firm in downtown Minneapolis. Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3600. 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investments, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you.